An all-female team of wildlife rangers is tackling illegal poaching in Zimbabwe. They're called Akashina, or the Brave Ones, and they come from disadvantaged backgrounds full of poverty and domestic violence.
They've undergone intense military-style training to protect elephants, rhinos, and other wildlife. CBS News foreign correspondent Debora Patta spent some time with these women, and she shows us just how they're warriors on and off the job.
Just remember your training, use the shadows, use the trees, create depth back in the bush. Okay, don't put yourself out there in the middle of the open. And just move through the trees, move through the shadows like a ghost. We've got a huge area to cover here, and we can't be everywhere at once.
Former Australian Special Operations soldier Damien Mander spent years in Iraq as a sniper. Now he's getting his best ranger, Petronella Chigumbura, ready for a solo night patrol.
I'm just looking around and listening, and if there's someone coming inside the park, I can hear him where I'm standing here.
Chigumbura is part of the Akashina squad, or the Brave Ones, an all-female anti-poaching team that has already arrested 80 poachers in the past year.
Keep those weapons out of the dirt.
Mander told us he once ridiculed the idea of female soldiers.
In our mindset, this was a gamble. I mean, I come from the ultimate boys club. We not only prided ourselves on being the only all-male units in the military, but we ridiculed units that transitioned to accept females.
But he changed his mind when he saw the success of US women on the front lines. The Brave Ones is entirely funded by private donors. The women all come from disadvantaged backgrounds, from desperate poverty to horrific domestic violence. Niratso Hoto faced an abusive husband who refused to let her work.
To me, the abusive thing was refusing me to find a job, to look for a job, and to proceed with my education. That's where the fight starts.
Hoto doesn't like talking about it, but she told us he beat her so brutally, often she could barely stand up afterwards. Eventually, she fled from her husband and divorced him.
We thought by putting them through our version of Special Forces selection that we're putting them through hell. Weapon out of the dirt! But the reality is that they'd already been through it, and that the distance a person can place between suffering and breaking is what defines the spirit of an individual. Okay, on the rope.
Now she is walking on air, carrying a renewed self-confidence and a high-caliber rifle. What do you think of yourself?
Now I can think that I can do something that is great, is I can see myself, yeah, and I can see that no man is going to challenge me again.
One night the team gets a tip.
There's a raid tonight for ivory.
A suspected poacher is hiding in the nearby village.
Someone has brought us here, and that's where police have now found him and put him in handcuffs.
He doesn't put up much of a fight, except to demand to know why a woman is guarding him. He's told to keep quiet. The women live for weeks at a time away from their children and families. Petronella Chigumbura, the star sniper, only gets to see her children every 2 months. Mander calls her a leopard on 2 legs and says her determination runs through the whole squad.
These women came in as individuals. Alone they were unbreakable, together they were unstoppable. I think women, given the opportunity, will change the face of conservation forever.
Debora Patta is joining us from Johannesburg. Debora, absolutely excellent story. I got chills several times throughout it, you know, listening to the women, and it's really moving. But aside from that, they're really good at their job. Why are they so good? What's different about them?
Anne-Marie, these women are remarkable, and we got chills being there. It was just incredible spending time with them. I think part of it is that they are so determined. A lot of them are single mothers. They're the only breadwinners, the sole breadwinners in their families. They have children to support, and now they're able to send their children to really good schools. Their success has been unparalleled in Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwean Parks Board, the official government body that controls most of the game reserves in Zimbabwe, have arrested, they've got about 2,000 people working fighting for them. The Akashina, the brave ones, have 16 women, and they've arrested the same number of poachers in the past year, over 80. Both of them. So I think that gives an idea of just how successful they are. In the last week alone, we've just heard they've arrested another 8 poachers. And I think another key reason, and this is one of the most beautiful parts of this story, is that there seems to be no corruption. Corruption is a huge problem in Zimbabwe in the anti-poaching area, where a lot of officials are corrupted, are paid bribes by poachers to let them in, to give them access to game so that they can kill wildlife. These women have displayed no signs of corruption. There has not been a single incident. There was one small thing when food started disappearing from the camp that they live in, and they conducted an investigation, the officials there, Damien, Mander and co, and they found that the women were taking this food to give to the wife of a poacher they had just arrested. She had just had a baby, and they were concerned about her welfare because her husband was now in jail. They had put him there, and I think that shows the integrity of these women.
Indeed.
It really does, Deborah. And, you know, we were just watching your piece, and we just kept marveling at the different elements of this story. Not only do you have the female empowerment angle, you've got the motherhood angle, the family angle. This gentleman, Damien, who comes from Australia, who is also skeptical about training women and finds out that they are just as tough as men, and in some instances even perhaps better than some men because of the lack of corruption. But there was some negative reaction to women taking on this job. Has that changed at all?
Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, you know, you've covered this continent as well, and you would imagine the reaction. Women not only getting jobs, but actually jobs that are traditionally reserved for men, and they were mocked. They were ridiculed in the beginning. Men would say to them, you can't do this, you're just wasting your time. But they were determined to show that they could do that. And now, wherever we went with them, they were goddesses. They were rock stars. People were cheering them. They are role models in their community. Sergeant Vimbai, the leader of this unit, her daughter said to us she wants to be just like her mother when she grows up. And I think part of that determination is that there is no fear. They are fearless, but there is no favor as well. They will arrest anyone, and they have proved that. It's not just theoretical. They actually arrested the husband of one of the women in the Akashina unit who was caught poaching, and they took him to jail. So they say to us, if you are family and you're caught doing poaching, you're going to do jail time. There's no special immunity just because we know you.
So to do the story, you actually lived at the campsite with the women. What was that like?
Well, it's quite stark. I mean, make no mistake, they live for weeks away from their families and their children, and it's very basic, the campsite. There's no electricity. They've got a borehole for running water, solar power. There's one shower that we all had to share. It's incredibly hot. They live in these basic tents with, you know, with cots, just living out in the wild the whole time. One of the most interesting things, and here's another amazing part of this story, is that they have a full-time chef at the camp, and all the women are vegan. Now, you have to understand, to be vegan in Africa, in an African country like Zimbabwe, is extremely rare. It's almost unheard of.
That.
Meat is such a big part of their culture. Exactly, Vlad. So you see, they have it for feasts, for funerals, for weddings, for any celebration. Chicken, even if there's not a lot of meat, it will be part of their diet. But Damien Mander was adamant. You join Akashina, you become a vegan. And initially the women said to us, we used to cheat. Every time we went home, we'd have a bit of meat. But then it became part of their philosophical belief. How could they kill what they were there to protect? They had to show to the community and set an example that they would not kill bushmeat, as many people do. It's one of the biggest problems with poaching. So that was another beautiful part of life there. We had to eat a vegan diet. We weren't allowed to bring any meat or any meat products into the Akashina camp either. And when they have relaxation time, it's, you know, they're like any other normal woman on their phones trying to charge them. There's a volleyball court that's been set up. They do that kind of thing. There's a lot of camaraderie between them. And there seems to be a lot of good-natured spirit as well, helping each other out. Because the hours are long. They work incredibly hard.
Man, Deborah, I feel like there's like 8 or 9 stories
in there.
Is.
And all the individual stories of the women are interesting. The one woman who said, you know, she is empowered now because she knows no man will ever challenge her again, seeing her children. A leopard with 2 legs. I love that.
Yeah, and it was really illuminating talking to you, Deborah. Thank you so much. So you can watch the full episode of The Brave Ones on the Down to Earth Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and search Down to Earth by CBS News. And you can also like the page for notifications when new episodes are uploaded.